"You're a weight on my future," she said. So I quietly packed my bags and disappeared. 2 years later, she just called, crying about her crushing student debt, completely unaware I'm launching the company she once laughed at. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. I remember the last night we were a couple. It was a Tuesday. Sarah was hunched over her laptop on the couch, the glow from the screen making her face look like a ghost. I was in the kitchen, humming to myself, packing up the leftovers from the dinner I had cooked, a slow-simmered beef stew. It was one of her favorites. For 3 years, that had been our rhythm. I worked my steady 9 to 5 job as a junior data analyst, and she was the brilliant, single-minded rocket ship. She had a dream of getting into one of the country's most exclusive graduate programs, and my only goal was to be her launch pad. I covered her half of the rent, handled all the groceries, and made sure her life was as stress-free as possible so she could focus entirely on her studies. While she was buried in textbooks, I was building her bookshelves. While she was writing essays, I was researching the best coffee beans to help her stay awake. My own ambition, a quiet but persistent dream of launching my own niche tech startup, had been sitting on the back burner for so long it was gathering dust. Every night, I'd see a new article about a bootstrapped startup or a young founder making it big, and I'd feel a little spark. But I'd quickly extinguish it. There was always something more important to do for Sarah. Her acceptance letter had come 2 weeks prior. A thick envelope from a top-tier university, full of glossy photos of ivy-covered buildings and smiling students. We'd screamed, we'd hugged, we'd celebrated with a bottle of champagne I had been saving. I felt like I had won the lottery too. I was so proud of her, so proud of us. I truly believed that once she got in, we could figure out the logistics together. A long-distance relationship, maybe I'd transfer jobs, or maybe I'd eventually move out there. I didn't care what the solution was, as long as we were a team. "The stew is in the fridge," I said, leaning over the back of the couch to kiss the top of her head. "Don't work too late." She didn't look up from her screen. She said, her voice flat. "We need to talk. About my future. Our future, as you see it." A cold knot formed in my stomach. The humming in my chest stopped. I knew, in that instant, that I was no longer a part of the us she was talking about. I wasn't her partner. I was a logistical problem she was about to solve. I sat down beside her, the smell of beef stew lingering on my hands, and waited for her to deliver the verdict. She put her laptop down and folded her hands in her lap, like a CEO preparing to fire a low-performing employee. The casual posture didn't match the cold finality of her gaze. "You've been amazing, Em," she began, the words sounding rehearsed, like a line from a bad script. "Truly, I couldn't have done any of this without you. You know that, right?" "I'd like to think so," I replied, my voice steady despite the tremor I felt deep in my gut. I braced myself for the next line, the one where she revealed the other guy, the one who was more ambitious or exciting. But she didn't. Her betrayal was more clinical, more about her ego than another person. "This is the biggest opportunity of my life," she continued, looking past me as if seeing a future I wasn't in. "And I can't be held back by someone who is content with just being stable. With a 9-to-5 job and a quiet life." I blinked. "I wasn't holding you back, Sarah. I was supporting you. I was the one paying for everything so you could focus on this." She winced, a brief flash of annoyance crossing her face before it was replaced with a placid mask. "That's exactly it. That's the problem. It's too comfortable. I need to be challenged. I need to be in a life where I'm constantly fighting to keep up, not one where everything is handed to me." "Are you calling me a handout?" I asked, my voice a whisper. "No, I'm just saying, you're a weight on my future, Em. It's not fair to either of us. I need to be completely independent to prove I can do this on my own. I can't take you with me. Not now, maybe not ever. And dragging you into this life of uncertainty would be cruel." Her logic was a twisted pretzel, designed to make her selfishness sound noble. She was painting herself as a martyr, sacrificing our relationship for her own success, and casting me as the anchor that had to be cut loose. I stood up slowly. The stew I had made for her was a stark contrast to the bitterness in the room. I walked to the bedroom and pulled a small suitcase from the closet. She watched me, her expression unreadable. "So what you're saying is this is it?" I asked, my voice flat. "Yes," she said. "I'm sorry, but this is what I need to do. It's a clean break. No more emotional ties. I need to be free." I nodded once, a single, definitive gesture. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just packed a duffel bag with a few essentials and walked out of the apartment we had built a life in. I left the leftovers on the counter and the half-finished stew in the fridge. As I reached the door, I turned to her. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Sarah," I said. It was the last thing I ever said to her in that apartment. And as the door clicked shut behind me, the last of the silence was my own. The days that followed were a blur of numb autopilot. I found a tiny, one-bedroom apartment on the other side of the city. It was nothing like our old place. No sun-drenched living room or kitchen island. Just four walls, a few boxes of my belongings, and a silence that felt heavier than a physical weight. The first week, I just existed. I went to my data analyst job, did my work without really seeing it, and came home to the echoing emptiness. My friends reached out, but I gave them clipped, vague answers. I was too ashamed to admit what had happened. Sarah didn't cheat on me in a conventional way, but the betrayal felt deeper. She had looked at me and decided I was an obstacle, a stepping stone she no longer needed. It was an insult to my character, to my entire existence in her life. One night, sitting on the floor with a cold pizza box as my table, I found myself staring at a notebook I had pulled from a box. It was full of sketches, diagrams, and notes from years ago. My old dream. The startup idea she had always quietly, or not so quietly, dismissed. She had called it a cute little hobby, a foolish fantasy for a man who needed to be grounded in reality. The irony was so bitter it made my stomach churn. She had needed me to be her reality so she could chase her fantasy, and now that her fantasy was a reality, she had no use for me. The pain was a fire in my chest, but for the first time, I decided to pour that fire into something constructive instead of letting it consume me. I grabbed a pen, and in the silence of my tiny apartment, I started to build. It began with just a few lines of code after work, a simple prototype on my old laptop. Soon, it became 2 hours, then 3, then late into the night. My apartment became my sanctuary, my workspace. I wasn't doing this for revenge or to show her up. I was doing it for me, to prove that I wasn't a weight and that my dreams were just as valid as hers. The loneliness was still there, but it was no longer a heavy burden. It was an emptiness I filled with purpose. The sting of her words, a cute little hobby, became a mantra. Every line of code I wrote, every problem I solved, felt like a direct response to her dismissal. I stopped following her on social media and told our mutual friends that I was taking some time to myself. I needed to cut all ties, to sever the tether she still had on my psyche. I needed to forget the person who called me a burden, who told me my dreams were worthless. Months passed. My little startup began to take shape. I developed a working model, built a small user base, and even started to see a trickle of revenue. My days were still spent at the data analyst job, but my nights were a different life entirely. I was in control. My life wasn't about supporting someone else's trajectory. It was about building my own. I got a small promotion at work and moved to a slightly bigger, nicer apartment. I was healthier, both physically and mentally. The quiet life she had scoffed at was becoming a quiet, confident success. Then, the first sign of the unraveling came from an unexpected source, an email from an old university friend. He and Sarah were in the same program, but he had dropped out a month prior. His email was a casual check-in, but he mentioned Sarah in a passing comment. "Man, grad school is brutal. Total pressure cooker. Sarah is really struggling. She's completely isolated herself, you know? She's a ghost. Not the same person I met back in the fall. Said she's already thinking of dropping out because of the debt." The words hit me with a jolt. The freedom she had so desperately craved, the independence she had thrown our life away for, had become her prison. She was alone, in a city where she knew no one, buried under pressure and debt. She had succeeded in becoming exactly what she wanted to be, a single, self-reliant individual, and it was destroying her. I read the email again, and then I just sat there. I didn't feel a rush of victory or a pang of sympathy. I felt nothing. It was over. Her life was no longer connected to mine in any way. She had made her choice, and this was the consequence. and I had no part in it. The first contact came on a Friday afternoon, a little over a year after our breakup. My phone buzzed with an unknown number. The text was short, with a familiar, almost entitled tone. Unknown, hey, how have you been? Just saw something that reminded me of you. I read it and felt nothing. Not a flicker of anger or nostalgia. It was a message from a ghost, a remnant of a life I had already left behind. I deleted the text and blocked the number. A week later, I got a call from an old friend, one of the few mutual friends I hadn't cut off. Dude, I don't know what's going on, he said, sounding annoyed. Sarah's been blowing up my phone all week. Asking for your number, asking if I've heard from you. She sounds not great. She's saying she made a huge mistake and wants to talk to you. Did you give her my number? I asked, my tone flat. No, man. Of course not. I told her I didn't have it anymore and that you were living your own life now. But she keeps asking. It's getting weird. Tell her to stop, I said. And if she doesn't, tell her you won't talk to her anymore. He agreed. I wasn't trying to be a hard ass. I was just protecting my peace. The silence I had built was too valuable to be broken by a person who had so casually shattered it once before. Then, the messages started to arrive in my junk email folder. At first, they were easy to ignore. They were just her name, Sarah, in the subject line. Then, they got longer. From Sarah.e. ***** at gmail.com subject. I made a huge mistake, Em. I know you probably hate me. I wouldn't blame you. But I'm really hurting right now, and I have nowhere else to turn. Grad school was a disaster. I dropped out. I couldn't handle the pressure, and I'm drowning in debt. I miss our life. I miss you. I made a huge mistake. Please, can we talk about a second chance? I read the email, a small, detached part of me impressed by her ability to turn her failures into my responsibility. She had made her bed, and now she was asking me to lie in it with her. I deleted the message and marked her email as spam. But the final attempt was the most desperate. She sent a text from yet another number. It was a long, rambling message that went into excruciating detail about her downfall. The student loan debt, the friend who had blocked her, the family who was disappointed in her. She ended the text by writing, I can't believe I gave up the best thing in my life for nothing. Can we please just talk? I'll do anything. I'll even help you with your little tech thing. The little tech thing part made me smile, a wry, humorless gesture. I didn't respond. I simply went back to the website I was building, a website for a company that, in the last 6 months, had generated more revenue than my salary. It was no longer a little tech thing. It was my life. It was my future. And she was a million miles away from it. The final encounter wasn't a planned meeting. It was a matter of circumstance, a coincidence, so ironic it felt scripted. I was meeting my lawyer at a downtown coffee shop to sign the final incorporation papers for my new business. We had a corner booth, the air thick with the smell of roasting coffee and new start ambition. I was explaining my marketing strategy when the bell above the door chimed. I looked up and saw her. Sarah. She was a ghost of her former self. The confident, determined posture was gone, replaced with a hunched, defeated slump. Her hair was pulled back carelessly, and she wore a worn-out trench coat that was probably her only winter jacket. She looked exhausted, and she was carrying a large, worn purse that was probably holding all of her worldly possessions. She walked to the counter, her eyes darting around the room, and I saw a flash of pure desperation in them. Then, her eyes landed on me. For a moment, she froze. The color drained from her face. She looked at me, then at my lawyer, then at the sleek laptop open on the table, and finally back at me. I was clean-shaven, wearing a tailored coat, and I was holding a pen, ready to sign the papers that would make me the owner of a new business. She walked over to the table, her steps hesitant. Em, she asked, her voice a fragile whisper. I looked at her, my expression calm and unreadable. I nodded once, a simple confirmation. I can't believe it's you, she said. You look so different. She glanced at my lawyer, a question in her eyes. Sarah, I said. My voice was low and firm, but not unkind. This is my lawyer. We're just finishing up some paperwork. She looked at the paperwork, then back at me. I was just here to meet with a loan officer. About my student debt. The irony was so sharp it almost hurt. I had a pen in my hand to sign for a business loan, and she was here to meet with someone to help her with her personal debt. Em, I know you probably don't want to talk to me, she continued, her voice gaining a desperate edge. But I have to tell you, I am so sorry. I was a fool. I gave up the best thing in my life for nothing. I want to come back. I'll help you with your little tech thing. I'll do anything. I made a mistake. Please, can you find it in your heart to forgive me? I leaned back in the chair and looked at her. I didn't feel a single drop of anger. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt a quiet, profound sense of peace. It's funny you should say that, Sarah, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Because you were right. You said I was a weight on your future. What you didn't understand is that you were a weight on mine. Her face crumpled. She started to say something, but I cut her off. Letting you go was the best thing I ever did. It forced me to be who I'm meant to be. It forced me to take my little tech thing seriously. And now, I'm building a life I couldn't have built with you, because you would have always seen it as something small, something beneath you. She began to sob. Please, Em. I've been so alone. Please. I looked at her, and the words were calm and final. Sarah, you needed to be free, and I was holding you back. It turns out you were right. I needed to be free too. And I am. So, I wish you well, but my focus is on my future. It doesn't include the past. I gave a final nod to my lawyer, picked up the pen, and signed my name on the dotted line. As I finished, I looked up. She was gone. The space where she had stood was empty, just as empty as the life she was now living. I returned my attention to my new company, a company that was free from her weight, and smiled. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.